Good afternoon. We're learning Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just, and we're going to be starting a new step on the ladder to spiritual growth today. So far, the Mesilas Yesharim is a step-by-step guide of how to grow spiritually, taking one small level after another. Not really a small level; they're not so easy to achieve perfection in, but we try our best. So the first level we talked about was Zehirus, watchfulness, being careful in all of the negative commandments. Then we learned about Zrizus, which is being zealous in performing all of the mitzvos. Then we did Nikius, which is a spiritual cleanliness of fulfilling the entire Torah. Then we talked about Precious, which is abstaining from things that are even allowed, which might lead one to violate the Torah. Then we learned about Tara, having purity in all of one's actions and thoughts. Then we learned about Chasidus, piety, where a person, all he wants to do is just serve Hashem to the best of his ability and just make Hashem happy. And now we're on the next level of Anava, humility. And humility is a very important attribute, to be humble. One of the biggest Yetzer that we have, one of the biggest ways that evil inclination traps us is by making us think that we're very important and to go after ego fulfillment, to be selfish, and to, let's say, trample on the rights of others to get ourselves ahead. We become haughty, and we think we're the most important person in the world. But a truly spiritual person who gets close to God is humble. So let's see what Ramchal has to say about humility. Now, it's a very tough calling to be a truly humble person, but the point is that we try our best. We make efforts. As long as we're making an effort to go in that direction, then we're in good shape. So we're in chapter 22 of Mesilas Yesharim, and the Art Scroll edition which we use, we're on page 439. So let's see what the Ramchal has to say about Anava, or humility. Hine, Kvar dibarnu lamala mignus hagaiva. We spoke about earlier already the horrible trait of haughtiness. And from that we learn how much a humble person should be praised and the praiseworthiness of humility. But now we're going to talk more about humility. And we'll understand haughtiness from that. Once we understand what true humility is, then we will get or understand what haughtiness is and how to stay away from it. Now, again, this doesn't mean that, to be a humble person doesn't mean that we don't have to recognize our gifts. But humility means putting it all in the proper perspective, which the Ramchal is going to help us do. Hine, klal hanava hayasa adam bilti machshav atzmo mishum tam sheyeh. Humility means is that a person should not ascribe importance to himself for any reason. And this is the opposite of haughtiness. Right? The haughty person thinks he's the most important person in the world. If someone else gets called up for an aliyah, it's a mistake. Really, they should have called me. They just called him, but it must have been a mistake because I'm the most important person. I should have gotten the honor in synagogue. I should be sitting up there, and everyone should be constantly saying how great I am. That's gaiva. Humility means that we shouldn't think that we're important. We shouldn't think we're important, more important than anybody else. And what comes out of humility, having the trait of humility, is the opposite of what comes out of haughtiness. We find that humility is twofold. One is humility in thought, and one is humility in actions. First, a person has to be humble in his thoughts. And then he has to act as a humble person acts. If a person is only humble in the way he acts, but not in his thoughts, then he is only one. He's a fake. He exhibits a fake humility, which is very evil, like we mentioned earlier. They are hypocrites that the world doesn't have anyone more evil than them. Now we'll explain the different parts of this. So you have some people, they act very humble, they pretend that they don't want honor, but really inside they covet honor. And they want to be important, and they want people to say how great they are. But they say, oh, yeah, oh, I'm so humble, don't, whatever, don't, you don't have to talk about me, I'm a very humble person, right? When it comes to humility, I'm the greatest. The Ramchal says this is very evil. A person has to be humble in his thoughts, in his inside, and he has to act humble on his outside. And the Ramchal here writes, the Art Scroll points out that here the Ramchal isn't talking about somebody who acts in a certain way in order to change his thought process, right? There's such a concept that if you act in a certain way, then you will eventually start thinking that way also. So if you're acting in a humble way with the goal to be a humble person and to change your mindset, to exhibit true humility, then that's okay. He's talking about here somebody who really inside he has no interest in being a humble person. He's just a haughty guy. He thinks he's the most important person in the world. And but on the outside he pretends that he's humble, so everyone could right. He's using humility to say how great he is, right? People just say that he's so humble because that's something else that he can be haughty about. He can be haughty about his humility. So ha'anava b'machshava hu sheyizbonin ha'adam v'yisames etzlo asher ein hatehila v'hakavod ro'yim lo. Humility in thought means that a person should contemplate and he should realize the truth that really he's not deserving of any praise and any honor. Kol shechein ha'isnasa al shar b'nei mino, all the more so that he doesn't deserve to rule over others. Why is this? Why should a person not realize that he's not worthy of praise and not worthy of honor? Because a human being, by definition, is lacking, is incomplete. Even if he's already accomplished something. Because he's still lacking. Even if a human being accomplished something, he's still lacking. It's impossible that a person, in whatever level that he's attained, isn't still lacking in some areas, even in that area. O mitzad tivo, o mitzad mishpachto, whether it's his nature, or his family, or krovav, o mitzad mikrum shekarolo, or because of his people that he is friends with, or things that happened to him, o mitzad maisav, or even what he's done. Sha'adam ein tzadik ba'aretz asher yasa tov v'lo yachta. Because the verse says there's no such thing as a righteous person who's been in the world and does good and has never sinned. Everybody has sinned, right? So we can't think that we're better than everybody else. Everybody has sinned. All of these things are intrinsic blemishes that human beings have. That means that we shouldn't rule over anybody else. Even if he has a lot of accomplishments and he's a really great person. Because in the end of the day, these negative traits that this person has will shadow his accomplishments. So in the end of the day, nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. What's an attribute that often leads people to haughtiness is intelligence. People who are very intelligent think they're better than everyone else. They want to be in charge, and they become haughty. Look how smart I am. And they think they're the cat's pajamas. I think that's a phrase. They think they're very important. Because what is the highest, let's call it a high level of a person? It's his intellect. That's who a person is, his mind. So if a person has a gifted mind, he thinks that's very important, right? It's objectively, people will say, I believe, that it's more important to have a intelligent mind than to have an athletic body, because the mind is on a higher plane. So this person who's very smart thinks he's very important. However, there's no such thing as a wise person that doesn't need to learn from somebody else. Even from his students. Sometimes a teacher doesn't know anything. A smart professor has to learn from his students. So why is his wisdom deserving that he, because of his wisdom, he should rule over others, because he still has, nobody knows everything, and he's still got stuff to learn, and he could even learn from his students. But someone who has the proper way of thinking, even if he's very wise, and he's head and shoulders above everybody else, right? He's an Einstein. But if he thinks correctly, even so, even if someone is Einstein or Stephen Hawking, he should still realize that there is no point for him to have haughtiness and to rule over others and to feel superior. Somebody who is intelligent and smarter than others, all he's doing is what his nature is. God blessed him with a brain that wants to learn, so he learns, he studies. That's how he was created. God created him that way. So all he's doing is what he has a desire to do because of the way that he was created. Just like a bird flies high, that's what he was created for. So too, somebody who is created with superior intelligence learns a lot of information. And an ox pulls things, because that's what oxes do. So a smart person too, his nature means that he should study and become more intelligent. And if this guy who is not as smart as him would have his IQ, then he would also have learned as much and been as smart. So we see that there's no reason to be haughty for one's intelligence. Rather, if a person is very smart, on the contrary, he's required to teach others. Like Rabbi Yochanan Zakai said, he says, if you learned a lot of Torah, don't think that you're so great, because that's why you were created. And in fact, they cite here from Reb Chaim Volozhner that if a person is born with greater gifts and he's smarter than everybody else or whatever it is, that's actually a reason he should be less haughty, because that means there's more obligations on him. God expects more of a person that he blessed with, whether it's intellectual gifts or some other type of, or wealth maybe we're going to learn about, or other gifts. Since God blessed him with all of these things, blessed him or her with all of these things, Hashem expects more of him than others. So really, he should be less haughty, because he's expected to do more. So maybe he didn't accomplish his specific mission than the guy who wasn't born as intelligent, or the fellow who wasn't born with a lot of money. So we're learning that. And it's important also what the Ramchal wrote is that the way a person comes to true humility in his thoughts is to contemplate. We have to sit and think. That's a very important thing to do. This is a theme that's been going out on over and over again through the Sefer, that we have to sit and we have to think and contemplate that these ideas, because we're always so busy, if we don't have time to think about it, then we're not going to change our thought process. But the idea is that we shouldn't think we're so great, right? God, if we're born with certain gifts, intellectual gifts, or we're born wealthy, we shouldn't think we're so great. God gave us those gifts, and just like a bird wants to fly, somebody who's smart wants to study, so he's studied a lot of things. And if this other guy would have had his IQ and enjoyed learning, he would have been as smart as him. So that's not something to be to feel that you're superior over somebody else. And if a person has done a lot of great things, maybe he could have done better. Now, again, this doesn't mean that a person should get depressed. We're all, I think the Ramchal is going to talk about it later, but we were all created in the image of God, and God saw that there was a need for each of us in the world. The idea is, though, that we shouldn't think we're better than anybody else. We just have to do what we have to do, and God created us with certain gifts. He blessed everyone with different gifts, and we have to accomplish our mission. And God saw that the world needed us right now, when we were born, to accomplish a certain task and to serve Him. And it's integral that each of us is here. But just in relation to somebody else, and you and him and everybody else, we shouldn't think that we're better than everyone, because everyone has a different purpose and different gifts. And if we're smarter, wealthier, or stronger than somebody else, that's how Hashem created us. If He would have blessed that person with those attributes, then he or she would have been the same. So hopefully with this will be a first step on the way for all of us to getting to humility and to leading us for the proper and perfect service of Hashem.